Okay, why don't we get started? And then, Tracy, if Bob shows up, would you please let him in?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'll keep an eye out.
We'll call the meeting to order. That's my my mallet here. And thank you for everybody showing up and participating. And I think we absolutely need to start off by just thanking all of our frontline medical and emergency workers who are doing such a wonderful job. And also all of those essential workers as well, which includes the RMLD employees, doing a great job in these dire times. So I hope everyone's been staying safe, and let's proceed to the meeting. This is where we usually read before the meeting. This meeting of the Reading Municipal Light Department Board of Commissioners is being recorded via Zoom for distribution to the community television stations in Reading, North Reading, Wilmington, and Linfield. The RMLD Board of Commissioners recognizes the importance of hearing public comment at the discretion of the chair on items on the official agenda as well as items not on the official agenda. We ask that all questions or comments from the public be directed to the chair and that all parties, including members of the RMLD board, act in a professional and courteous manner when addressing the board or responding to comments. Once recognized by the chair, all persons addressing the board shall state their name and address prior to speaking. It is the role of the chair to maintain order in all public comment or ensuing discussion. Phil, would you mind being the board secretary today?
Yes, I'm the board secretary for the whole year. Don't you know that?
Oh, I didn't realize that. That's wonderful. Yeah. I'll have to ask that question again. Could everyone please identify themselves, because we're on the Zoom and it'd be good to do that. I'll start. We'll go through the board and then everyone else in the room. I'm John Stempek, Chairman of the Board of Commissioners.
I'm Dave Hennessy, Vice Chair of the Commissioners.
Dave Pacino, Board Member. Sorry.
Go ahead, Dave.
Just Dave Talbot on the board.
Yeah. Phil Pacino, the senior member of the board.
Yes, indeed.
And secretary for the year.
Yeah. Yes.
We have a CAB member, please.
Yeah, I'm Vivek Soni, CAB member from Reading.
Thank you. And the RMLD people, please.
Colleen O'Brien, General Manager.
Hamid Jafari, Director of Engineering and Operations.
Wendy Markowitz, Wendy Markowitz, Director of Business Finance and Technology.
John McDonough, the Assistant Director of Engineering and Operations. Thank you.
Tracy Schultz, Assistant.
Chuck Underhill, Integrated Resources Director.
Thank you. And for the other members from the Select Board, if you could please introduce yourselves.
Vanessa Alvarado, Select Board Liaison.
Karen Herrick, Reading Select Board.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So we usually start this with feedback from the RMLD Citizens Advisory Board, from the CAB. And would you care to comment on the recent meeting?
Okay. So the CAB met last week, and we got some information on topics that are going to be covered tonight, specifically items number 5, 7, 8, 9, and 10, which are on your agenda, at least the published agenda, are topics that we got information on. So rather than talk about those, I think, I'll let that information be mentioned during the meeting. Okay. But I think the main point was that the CAB is satisfied with how RMLD is addressing these tough times. And I think that will be discussed and presented by the different representatives from RMLD. The only other point is that I have reached out to the town managers. I think RMLD is reaching out to all the different towns to get the extension for the 20-year agreement. As mentioned at meeting last week, and I have reached out to the town manager and to some select board personnel at Reading, and I think that issue has not yet been addressed by and they at least I've made them aware of it. I've sent emails about it, and I've also talked with Karen earlier today. So it's a topic that I think all the towns need to address.
Okay, thank you, Vivek. Comments from the liaisons to the RMLD board from the select persons?
Thanks, John. Yes, Vivek, we did receive your email. Thank you for that. The board had been interested in pursuing this with the new board seated after the election, but the priority, honestly, in the last month plus has been in addressing COVID-19. Karen, if you're comfortable, I can bring this up to the chair to see when we can have this added to our next agenda. We're meeting weekly now in order to give the community updates on COVID-19, so we should be able to find time. But unfortunately, we haven't had an opportunity just yet.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Karen, anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I really appreciate the fact that we've had power almost this entire pandemic, and thank God we're great customers. Thank you very much. And I live near Meadowbrook, so I figure like we've been testing your system, so it's been great.
Especially with the fire at Meadowbrook, right?
Exactly. I did want to let you know that my last meeting as a Reading Finance Committee member, I did directly ask our town manager about, in the event that RMLD wanted to issue some debt going forward, Reading would absolutely be supportive, and then we'd bring it to town meeting. And the interesting thing is that you would, I don't know all the ins and outs, but I know you have a fabulous debt rating, and so does Reading. So either one would work, the credit ratings, if you were to do that in the future. And so just want to put that out there. We're behind you.
Thank you very much. We'll certainly take that into consideration. As you know, we're a very conservatively run organization for the length of time we've been in existence. So we've tried to do our best to stay away from debt, but there's always times when you may want to reconsider it. So we'll certainly take that under advisement. If we could move on to item number 5, RMLD's response to COVID-19. Colleen?
Well, I'm going to let Hamid do that, but before I pass it over to him, I just want to announce that we still have no illnesses here at the RMLD. We still have full business and electric continuity. Maybe a little bit later we can have John give an update from the last storm, but we did very well. Hamid will talk about some of the phasing. We were extremely proactive when this virus came out because we do provide essential services, and when you do have to continue to provide safe and reliable electricity, we are very familiar with getting into the emergency action mode. So I'll let Hamid go through some of the phasing. We are working now on coming up with part of our procedure under our EOP for infectious disease of remobilizing us back towards normal operations, which will have, we will continue to follow state, federal, and local guidelines. But we were finding out that there are a lot of efficiency measures, automation and stuff that we will keep intact that have been working really well. But when I get done with that report, I'll be sure to send it out. But I will turn it over to Hamid.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much, and I appreciate the support that we've been receiving during the COVID-19 from all town departments, as well as, the board members, their support, and everyone. So I'm going to give you an update on the infectious disease plan for the emergency plan of operation, as well as the major emergency plan of operations. The first thing we're going to talk about.
I'm sorry, Tracy, are you putting up a?
Yeah, is this the presentation?
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, Hamid.
No.
All right, that's fine.
That way we can just quickly go through the slides. We're just going to give a quick summary. Sorry.
Can you see it?
Yeah, we can see that.
Yes.
The first slide.
Yes.
Okay. Give me
could you go to the next one, please?
This one?
All right, great. Yes.
And Phil, hopefully you've seen these when they were emailed out.
I actually see, they're on my computer. I can see them.
Oh, good. Excellent.
Oh,
okay.
great.
Yeah, I see them.
Well, the RMLD management team, we set up the emergency response team, included the directors from all departments, business, finance, engineering operations, IRD, and we've been doing the Zoom daily meeting conference, video conference meetings at 10 a.m. With a full agenda to cover all the facts, the updates, and everything. As far as the employees concerned, we immediately implemented the social distancing, separating the trucks, and we provided iPhones, iPad, and also for the employees, when we trained them on the Zoom, how to use that for the team meetings, including with the operation personnel and also the unions. HR director, Janet Walsh, sent out employees update via email discussing the CDC and the town, public health and federal laws, internal communication, everything that, employees, they needed to know. With the facilities, we basically checked all the filters throughout the building. The cleaning contractors were put on notification for deep cleaning and take extra care following the sanitization of the building. Cleaning product we upgraded. We also provided gloves for the employees and also the wipes, the sanitization wipes. We suspended all the non-essential preventative maintenance work, and we only focused on the emergency and the needed work, like the emergency generator maintenance work that we needed to get done, and maybe needed attention. Building closure per Board of Health, which Board of Health recommendations and guidelines were followed, and it was passed on to the employees. As far as the materials and supplies concerned, we made sure that we have 1 month minimal supplies for both electric and business side, and we contacted all the suppliers to see what the availability of the supplies are. We reviewed our emergency purchasing laws to make sure that we follow them and follow the state guidelines. With the IT, we basically provided VPNs for remote work from home, as the employees now, they were working from home and some working from home, and they needed to use that to get the files from RMLD to access the computer. We assessed the vulnerability risks, we updated the users, we also watched the NERC reliability compliance issues to make sure that we follow those guidelines. Under the town and customers, Colleen represented town for RMLD in the town of Reading Emergency Planning Committee. We provided press release, the constant contact using the Zoom in order to demonstrate and in order to have the Board of Selectmen and provide reports for all 4 towns. Notification to all the customers for operations. We did that. The operations also switched from proactive to reliability projects to maintenance directly related. The ones that they were immediate threat and they were a threat to the reliability and only emergency services, and also for the service connects and disconnects. These are the ones that we prioritized and we focused on. The hardship on moratorium, basically, which the law was pertaining to property taxes. Although that we work with the customers on the payment plans, we cannot, we don't have the rate doctrine to waive or discount. Also, the discounts are not a late fee. However, we work with the customers in order to come up with a payment plan during this tough times. All the businesses and electric continuity, they are intact as of April 13th. The next slide, please. Okay, emergency plan of operation and major emergency plan of operations was reviewed in detail. We prepared emergency plan of operation which was for greater than minimum staffing, and also major emergency plan of operation, which is less than the minimum staffing. We established all electric and business continuity functions and established remote work capabilities for the staff, evaluated the plans, and also moved from large capital to maintenance work. We maintained all on-site contractors, 2 overhead, 1 underground. They're qualified contractors. They have a knowledge of the system, just in case that, you know, something happens, so they know exactly what's expected of them doing. And we have these are good contractors. We've had great experience with them. We maintained the facilities crews and also the stock persons on site physically with the social distancing, obviously. We reviewed all the union contracts for flexibility, and we established the Zoom with unions for possible side letters, but we didn't need to really do that. They've been very cooperative as far as, you know, the contract concerns. We reviewed previously identified and maps of the town with critical infrastructure. We updated them. Basically, on those maps, we updated the town hall facilities, police departments, fire, water, sewer, pumping stations, all the nursing homes, assisted living facilities. All of those were identified on the maps, just in case there's an outage, how quickly we could, you know, bring them back to power. We reviewed the contingency plans for loss of the substations. They checked the substation maintenance, update all the substation equipment. We made sure that they're testing or they're up to date, which they are. And also Wilmington substation, which remains on a closed watch. As you know, that's our oldest substation. So we did the single contingency analysis just in case the substation is lost or something happened to the substation, how we could support the load. The next slide, please. So these are we defined some phasing. The phasing in order to to define which group and team up the people. So in each phase, so we can continue the electric and business continuity. So employee phasing 1, that's emergency plan of operation, which means greater than minimum staffing. We set up team A and B that, they work from home and office. We switched to electronic signatures, the contracts, bids, wires, everything, immediately, we switched to electronic signatures setup using the PDF files. We set up the operation team A and team B, the line ops and substations, they were separated, physically separated at different locations on the campus. And they're all on call duties, weekend trouble shifts also. Saying engineering, we have five control authorities, which 3 they're working from home and 2 physically distance with the field, and they're ready for calling duties if something happens. So they were all set up nicely, and it's been working out great. The next slide, please. The phase 2 was again emergency plan of operations with minimum staffing. And the business team A and B started implementing all the Adobe signatures, preparing their residential commercial payment plans. We developed revenue impact study and for the rate classifications. The operations and engineering team and A and B, they started rotating. So 1 week at home, another week at work. And that's been working out really great. The team that they're working from home, they're on call that they could report to work in a short time period if they called in. For the storm response, team A and B, they distance report to locations, and trouble response restoration assignments are clearly defined. So if they come in, they're going to be separated at Station 4 and also at 230 Ash Street. So We have physical separations. Also within the groups, they have the minimum distances of 6 foot separations. A weekend OT immediately got suspended for non-emergency works, and we limited everyone to 8 hours of shift per work, no 16-hour shift schedules. 12-hour shift for Saturday, Sundays remained for the trouble workers, unless it's storm related, you know, which we just recently experienced on April 13th, and we brought everybody in, so it really worked. All the team A and B, everybody reported to work and worked very nicely with the setup that we had already defined. The next slide is the phase 3. Phase 3 is the time that we call it the major emergency plan of operations. That's for minimum staffing. That is the situation where COVID-19 is next, or a coincidence with the storm or any type of like major substation losses. And this is the one we have a plan for that too, the business impact on team A and B, where basically redefined and we extended the processes and procedures on the APs, payroll, billing, paper payments, box pickup, and all of those. And the operations and engineering team A and B will be flexed. At that time, basically, we get all the qualified personnel in control room, line operations, and substations, and we secure hazardous areas during the storm and the post-storm restoration efforts. We also contact the mutual aid, which we recently signed a contract with AP and NEPA, and we get every help that we can get. So that's basically was the plan, and the lessons that learned in the next slide. Basically, I'm not going to go through all of them, but basically these are the lessons that learned. You could read them from this exercise. Basically, we're dealing on a daily challenges with public health and the laws, interpretations and applicability, and we've been in contact, you know, and getting second interpretations from lawyers, from making sure that, you know, we interpret the laws correctly. And we've been, you know, we've been experiencing, I have personally experienced the Zoom bombing. I mean, the people, the hackers, they get on the Zoom and they try to, you know, later on they send you the threatening emails. They want money. They want Bitcoin. So be aware of that. The person property tax deferrals, that's another thing that, you know, well, it's been, you know, learned that during this process. And also the payment plan that, you know, the utilities, all the municipal utilities, they've come up with to work with their customers. So as RMLD, the town communication or RMLD impact of operations, town and Reading Board of Health. We've been following the Board of Health directives, which is basically the directives that are coming from the state. So we've been closely monitoring those, and we pass those directives to the contractors, as well as we've gone over in details with our crews to make sure we follow the rules and regulations, and making sure that, you know, we're all on the same page with the rest of the town departments. The town communications, we talked about the capital to expense money shifting. So the capital projects now basically they're on halt, and we're focusing on the maintenance. The maintenance related, when we're talking about, these are talking about when, you know, for the disconnect, connecting the services, if the transformer needs to be replaced, then it's not going to cause an outage to the customer. Those are the ones that, you know, we're still taking care of, setting poles and making sure that, you know, the reliability system is not compromised. So these are most of the activities that have been going on and still going on. And we were keeping, we're hoping that, you know, we go through this process without any major incidents. Lastly, I got a good news for you. Well, this year we got the Reliability Award from APPA again for the second time. This is our second Reliability Award from APPA for having great reliability. We got one in 2017 and another one 2019, because our maintenance level has been paying off really, and the reliability is getting better and better. and we want to keep it that way, hopefully for the future, so the people, they don't have to experience long extended outages, which by in the past the storm also, I don't think majority of the services, I mean 99% were picked up less than 24 hours, and only few that they were left. These are the ones that the wire inspectors of the various towns, they needed to check for the safety in order to turn them back on. So that concludes the report, my report. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Hamid. That was an excellent report. Clearly, I had seen the feedback on the award that the RMLD was given for reliability, which is pretty spectacular, that in a relatively short period of time, we've been able to, with the extended efforts, be able to secure such an award. Are there any questions for Hamid?
I do, and I would just echo what John just said, Hamid. Great job. And I had a question of when did you first implement the sort of these health policies with respect to when people are out in the field working, and any social distancing or other sort of measures out in the field or at the site? When did that first happen?
It was right at the beginning of this COVID-19. That was back in March that the social distancing.
February 28th.
February 28th, you started implementing measures to keep people safe.
Right.
And that involved something like that, right?
Right.
That involved any construction activities happening, any utility-related construction activities.
Right.
And that was back in February. And I saw that there was a similar order from the town governing non-utility construction. That was about 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
Can I chime in on that?
Yep.
So we had our first meeting at the end of February, and then the town had their first emergency meeting on March 2nd, I believe. You're talking about the governor's order on construction and the subsequent Board of Health. So I had sent an email up to the town asking the Board of Health to consider the different categories that we have for construction. I gave 5 different categories with a lot of detail in it. And I asked for an update because they had their vote last Monday. What I got in return, Gene Delio sent it to me, was an order from the Board of Health that is essentially discusses static construction. So a static construction would be like the parking lot or the roof, but it's not electrical work out into the field. So John McDonough took the order, extracted what we could do for non-static jobs, had a stand-down meeting, went over all of our policies, contacted their contractor agency, and our employees had already been trained. So Paul McGonigal for facilities will be discussing stand down with the static projects, which are on hold, but he can call them back to start finishing them up under that policy. But Board of Health didn't really send out something that really applied to municipal workers on non-static projects. So, but we take.
But you did it a month earlier, is what it sounds like. You were on this a month earlier than that for the utility operations, basically.
I feel like you're asking me 2 different questions.
No, I'm just kind of, what I'm doing is calling out the great work of RMLD, what it seems like to me that the department, Hamid, you and John were implementing safety measures late February.
Yeah, when the governor issued his order, I basically sent all the contractors working on static home until such time they had COVID plans, and then we just waited for the Board of Health to come out with their order. But yeah, we trained our employees immediately. But I'm just saying, so yeah, we were very proactive with it. But when you're talking about specifically that order, it's static projects, which we don't have a lot of. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. In the meantime, I believe Bob Coulter, you've joined us, correct?
Hi, Bob.
Hi, Bob. I think you have to unmute your.
Hi, folks. Hi, how are you?
Good.
Hi,
Bob.
I am on. Sorry for being late. I totally zoned.
It's okay.
And I'm out literally walking my dog, and I'm like, oh my goodness. So, hold on.
Well,
Okay.
we do allow one rookie mistake as a new commissioner. You get a reprieve. No
Yeah,
problem.
We've never been there ourselves, right?
No.
Well, thank you very much, Hamid.
You're welcome.
The next order of business is the minutes, which I believe are going to be. We'll review those at our next meeting because we've been pretty busy, obviously, with all the other things that have been going on. So we'd like to move into the general manager's report.
Okay, great, thanks. So we guys talked about the 20-year agreement already with the town of Reading. So just an update with Wilmington. So I was on their Board of Selectmen meeting last week, gave a presentation, had followed up with some questions that they had sent me a couple of days prior. I think they were very happy with the thoroughness that I replied to their answers on. The town manager, Jeff Hull, gave us a lot of kudos about the value. One of the questions detailed a lot of the value, both customer service and rates. We went through that, and so they took a vote and passed that. So we still have the 3 towns left, and now that Vanessa and Karen have discussed it, I will just follow up with Linfield and North Reading again with just another reminder that those have to be done by May 31st is what we're looking at, 180 days from the time that the 10-year renewal expires. So it's just a reminder. If anybody needs me to forward some questions and values, I'm more than happy to do that. It makes me feel really good when you get a chance to write down everything that we're so good at, all the benefits we have having a municipal light department. When you compare it to IOUs, it's really quite amazing. The annual report I sent out.
John, can I ask one question on that topic?
Sure, go right ahead.
Colleen, what happens if all 4 towns haven't come to an agreement and signed by May 30th, whatever?
Well, actually, one of the questions that was asked had to do with certain things in the nature of changing the contract. So I was very clear legally that it takes 2 different directions. If you wanted to discuss, say, more advisory role in your town, or if you wanted to say, I need a little bit of a delay because of COVID, those are all things that the people that are in the agreement can sit down and talk about and discuss. They're well within the agreement. But let's say someone wanted to have an in lieu of tax payment increased. That is legislative. You can't, there's a whole bunch of things that you can't do inside of the agreement as just discussion, as a formal discussion. There's a lot of things that go back to special legislation. So, I'm more than happy to send the answers to the questions in. But yeah, so if somebody needed a little bit of time because of COVID, I think if we got everybody together, that we would still have to have a formal meeting, but I think it probably would be fine.
Thanks.
Good, thank you.
So the annual report I sent out last Friday, so even though the town meeting got postponed, it was still on the warrant to have the presentations. So maybe you guys got a chance to look at it. Kids did a great job with the artwork and lots of accomplishments and stuff. But I did write a note in there that the financials are a little bit delayed because of COVID, and Wendy and I are working on that, and they are expected to be in and follow up as draft financials in June. So then it will be a complete annual report. And take a look at it. If you have any questions, let me know. Try to make it pretty self-explanatory and give statistics and profiles and stuff that will help, make it a worthy read. So, but Wendy was still on for June, correct? Did we lose Wendy?
No, she's unmuted.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, we are.
Okay, great. And I wrote right on the last page that we don't expect any discrepancies in financials. It all looks good, and we present to the board every month, so it's just been chugging along. So it's just more of a formality, but we will make sure to follow that up promptly.
Colleen, could you also talk about the storm response? I believe that's one of the items.
Sure. John, you want to give an update on that, please?
Yes, absolutely. So with the wind event that occurred on last Monday, we did have a total of 3,900 customers that were affected through our system. We did have the majority of those customers picked up and restored within the first 24 hours. As Hamid had alluded to, there were a few outliers that were associated with those restorations that needed wiring inspections for repair to their own personal property. But we were able to work with our crews. We did split them in different shifts so that nobody was working more than 16 to 18 hours per shift. And we did work through the night. There was a short period of time where we had to stand our crews down during the wind event because it was simply just too dangerous for our crews to be out working in the conditions that they were in with the high winds. We didn't want to put our employees into any type of situation where they may have gotten hurt. So we did have a short, brief hour-and-a-half stand down while our crews were able to work on other things but not get themselves into a dangerous situation. But all in all, we did have a full complement of our staff working the storm the entire time. We worked through the night and through the next day to make sure that everybody was restored in a timely and safe manner.
Thank you, John. My understanding is that the RMLD, on a comparative basis, was far faster at restoring power than many other, whether they be municipals or IOUs in the state. Even a day or two later, there were still 10,000 plus people without power. Was your understanding as well?
Yes, that is correct. National Grid had peaked at over 80,000 customers without power, and Eversource peaked at just around 78,000 customers without power, and it turned into a multi-day event for those two IOUs.
Thank you.
I can attest to that. I was in the storm room, so we were in for 2 days.
Oh, is that right? That's right. We have got an inside guy there.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. So we had a multi-day event from Sunday through Tuesday, and that was in the North Shore, and it extended into Wednesday in the South Shore. Very, very big event.
Wow.
If I can add something quick, John, is that okay?
Please, go right ahead.
So sometimes we may have some residual folks out of power. Just remember that when our troublemen, so during storms, we have bird dogs, which is qualified engineers, technician, people that are available that will go out and identify whether a wire is Comcast or whether it's electric. And John's right, he called the stand down, and then I sent emails out to all the police, fire, and town managers telling them that we would just be identifying hazards and then, you know, to eliminate the electrical hazard, put out detour signs, and then we would come back for restoration efforts afterwards. But sometimes if trees take down services and it rips the service out of the house, people have to understand that sometimes when we show up, we cannot reinstall the electricity until they get an electrician and a wire inspector to do a inspection.
Right.
Because it's just physically not safe. So there's always going to be a few that take us a few days to work with the wire inspector to get those back up. We're all back up with them now, John, are we?
Yes, 100% were restored.
Okay, great.
Great.
Excuse me, Colleen. On your incident command structure, your control center, when they were put into action, what was the plan, or how did you guys handle the inside workers? Were they remote, or were they socially distanced inside the building? How did you handle that approach?
They were socially distanced inside the control room. We actually had 3 people in there, so they all had 6 feet distance.
Yes.
2 control room operators and 1 community relations. So usually when the storm hits, Joyce, who has the liaison phone, she has the GM liaison phone. She's sitting there working with them and tweeting out the information, because we try to mitigate the amount of calls that come in so that they can dispatch and work with the engineers for switching the circuits. But so there was never more than 3 people in there with proper social distancing.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Any other questions? If not, I'd like to suggest that we move to number 9, integrated resources first, and then come back to the payment to the town of Reading update, if that's okay with everybody.
Yes.
Chuck, I think you're... You have to unmute, Chuck, I think. There you go.
So earlier this month, I was asked to look at the potential financial ramifications of COVID-19, what it would do to our load, what would happen to our power supply portfolio in the wholesale market, what were some of the potential impacts to our operations and our budgets. So I began that process, and next slide, please. In order to assess the changes across the 6 areas listed here, we have to break the impacts out to those that are weather related, those that were actually COVID-19 related, and those that were due to other changes. Other changes include new loads, efficiency electrification program impacts, solar, economic factors, et cetera, et cetera. So we've begun the process of reviewing the information relevant to RMLD for how those impacts are occurring and seeing if we can focus down on COVID-19. If you take a look at the next slide, please. We also went out and got some information as to what is happening with other entities that are in this business and also in, at the time, impacted areas. It included Italy and other APPA systems. What we found was that for the second quarter of the year, the one we're in now, they were experiencing a 6 to 10% drop in electric consumption. And for the rest of the year, the anticipated drop was going to be about 7 to 9% in electric consumption. So to make life simple, we focused it down to an 8% load reduction for RMLD for the remainder of 2020. And that started our baseline analysis. Now, as we go through the process and collect information specific to RMLD, we'll be able to tweak that number and go through and tweak the impacts. We're modifying our current set of tools and instruments to be able to do that. So the load forecasting capabilities are going to be there. The power supply modeling will be there, and I'll be able to work with Wendy on some of the budget impacts. So if we take a look for the remainder of the year, quarter 2 to quarter 4, 2020, anticipate selling 520,524 megawatt hours, and that's based on the load forecast for 2020. An 8% reduction is about 41,640 megawatt hours. So that's what we would expect to lose in wholesale load. Slightly higher reduction in retail sales because of the distribution losses. So next slide, please. So we went back and we pulled out 3 years of historic data, or 2 years of historic data in the budget, actually. And then those are the bars. And if you take a look at the powder blue line going across the top, that is essentially the 2020 forecast. The first 3 months are as forecasted, and then April through the remainder of the year, we reduced that by about 8%. If you look at the red dotted line, those are actual results, January, February, and March. This is what I mean by having to take out, for example, weather-related effects, because January was the warmest January on record, and February was warm. March's sales were down. So we need to go through and discount those impacts as we experience each month in order to isolate the COVID impacts. So next slide, please. So we made some assumptions for being able to at least build a base case. We started with the 2020 budget as our baseline. The load forecast was prepared using normalized weather impacts and known and measurable changes pre-COVID-19. The revenues are anticipated on normal sales, and expenses are anticipated on normal operations. And we used the planned capital investment from the 2020 budget, or for the 5-year budget for 2020. So we went through and we looked at financial mitigation capabilities. We can use the rate stabilization and deferred fuel funds. We have the ability to defer or avoid expenses and capital investment. And then we can look at the impacts of a rate adjustment if we needed one for the remainder of 2020. So these were just all establishing sort of base case opportunities for us. They did not define a specific path that we would be looking at. So what is unknown at this point? Well, until we get into it, we do not know the magnitude of the COVID-19 event. We assume the 8% reduction. We don't know the duration. We've assumed through the end of calendar 2020 for this exercise. So next slide, please. So we looked at load impacts on the power supply budget. That's the 8% monthly reduction. As we get information from the various classes, we will be able to fine-tune what some of those load impacts look like month to month. We looked at the impacts on accounts receivable, and we've set up a process where we are looking at the 30, 60, 90-day outstanding balances on the receivables. We're also looking, as we get to our discount days, the last day of the prompt payment discount, how many customers are paying the bills and taking advantage of the discount. So we'll be able to see how much the sales are down, and then we'll be able to see from the expected revenues what we're actually seeing come in. So it's kind of a two-step process for doing that. We're also looking at the impacts on accounts payable. We have the ability to rerun the power supply budget based on updated market pricing and on the resources that we have in the portfolio and the loads that we're experiencing. We're also able to look at shifts that may occur between the capital and the operating budgets, depending on what Hamid is able to do during this period, if his construction capabilities are cut back by the state or by recommended social activities and operating capabilities. So the COVID-19 impacts might have an impact on the credit rating. That's sort of at the end of the day to see how we're doing. But we do note it as a potential impact and something that we'll just track. And we have impacts on the RMLD programs and services. For example, we offer residential audits. Up until COVID-19, those included a site visit as one of the delivery options. That's off the table right now. So we are switching to a video audit and a online audit process that we're looking at in order to be able to continue to deliver services even with social isolation and the inability to get to customer locations to physically collect the data. We also have revenue and expense shifts and the impacts on cash flow. And at the end of the day, this all sugars off to what we may need for a rate adjustment if the other activities that we're looking at sort of fall through. So next slide, please. So power supply impacts very quickly. And I put the math in here. I apologize. I thought I had fixed the line down below, but we took a look at what the original budget was, which was $46 million divided by the 520,000 megawatt hours, 3.5% losses, translates to a retail energy price of 8.56 cents. We went and did a COVID-19 adjusted budget, where we reduced the power supply cost. We reduced the anticipated load. That's supposed to be 1.035. Corrected it, but I'm not sure why that didn't take. And we come up with an average rate of 0.08876 as what we would need to charge at retail. So how does that translate? The current billing fuel adjustment that we have in our retail rates is 8735. So we would have expected for the remainder of the year for that to drop slightly to 8560. With the COVID adjusted impact, it actually rises slightly to 8876. And that has an impact if we cover that through our deferred fuel reserve of $674,000. That's affordable. We have more than that in the deferred fuel reserve. So basically, we can cover what we are expecting to see for a reduction in power supply revenues with the deferred fuel fund that we have. In other words, we can cover it through our existing resources. Next, please. So that's power supply. Now the question is, what happens to the operating portion of the budget? Well, the operating revenues for the last 3 quarters of the year are targeted around $23 million, $22,928. That's from the 2020 budget. We assumed uniform expenditures per month. An 8% reduction in sales revenue for the remainder of the year is $1,834,240. We have enough in the rate stabilization fund at present to be able to pay that without changing the retail rates. So looking at the operating portion, looking at the power supply portion of the budget, we have the resources to be able to manage the impacts of COVID if they stay at 8%. If they move, we'll reassess the numbers. Next, please. So our response options, we're pretty comfortable with being able to maintain rate and revenue stabilities throughout from the baseline to the 8% level. What's going to impact us in terms of determining low and high cases are the magnitude and the duration of the impacts. We don't have any idea what those are going to be at this point, but we're tracking them and we're adjusting the model accordingly. Our response options in priority of impact is the rate stabilization fund and the deferred fuel fund. Both of those look like they're satisfactory to cover it. A rate adjustment if we need it. We can reach out to suppliers for grace periods. I would point out that we actually had a supplier reach out to us and ask what they could do to help, and we're currently working on a movement of some of our power supply expenses in 2020 out a little ways, which would give us a little more breathing room this year and not destabilize our power supply. So is that it? That's the last slide, I think. Or is there one more? That's it.
Thank you, Chuck. That's a very, very detailed analysis and looks like a great plan for the rest of the year, certainly. Do you have any questions for Chuck on this? If not, I'd like to return to item number 8, which is the payment to the town of Reading.
John, can I make a quick?
Yes, please, go right ahead.
So we're going to be using that as a template moving forward. So each month when the bills come in, the bills go out and the payments come in, we will use that same template and Chuck will update the numbers if there's any offset that starts to come in with deferred payments or anything like that.
Excellent.
So we'll make sure we keep.
So you'll be tracking it real time.
Okay. Thanks.
In terms of the payment.
John, sorry, it's Vanessa. I have a question for Chuck.
Sure, Vanessa, please.
Hi, Chuck. Great presentation. Thank you. You had said that the anticipated usage will continue to decrease through the rest of the year.
Yes.
Perhaps I didn't catch it, but what is that based on?
The 8% number that I use is an experience-driven number that came out of some of the initial European experiences with this, as well as what some places in the United States are either seeing or anticipating as well, based on the work that they did. So we're relying right now on information from outside sources.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Very helpful.
Good question, though, Vanessa. And certainly if it kicks back up, that's even better for us, right? But it's better to be prepared, which we've been for many years, to anticipate this kind of an event. So I think that's great work, Chuck. I'd like to return to the item number 8, the payment to the town of Reading update. As we all know, we've been working on this for an exponential amount of time, probably about 1.5 years or more, trying to come up with the right formula moving forward. And I think we're pretty much there. As I understand it, the CAB met and had a preference for one of the various algorithms we had listed on our site. The Board of Commissioners had a slightly different preference. And so I think what I'd like to do is propose perhaps a compromise tonight. And Mr. Hennessy, would you care to comment on that?
Yes, I agree, John. I was at that CAB meeting last week, and it seemed like there was some consensus that the 3-year rolling average, in fact, I think a lot of us are starting to feel like that makes a lot of sense, that if we're calculating on kilowatt hour sales and it's based on a 3-year rolling average, that there wouldn't be any spikes for the other, up or down, that it would be more moderated on an annual basis. So I'd like to make a motion if I can, Chair.
Please go ahead.
Okay. For the years 2021 and beyond, that the pilot payment to the town of Reading be calculated annually based on a 3-year rolling average of kilowatt hour sales at the rate of 3.875 mils. And that the GM has the authority to adjust the payment as necessary in times of crisis or other reasons to maintain the fiscal stability and reliability of RMLD.
Could I get a second on that, please? Anyone?
Well, one question on the rolling average. Obviously, this year becomes a part of any rolling average. The first thing I would suspect is somebody might say, are we going to omit this COVID crisis out of that calculation? I think that might be a question that you could anticipate.
Yeah, I would agree that would be a relevant question at this point. Things are a lot different than they were 2 months ago.
Yes. No. Do you take out a certain period of time right now?
Well, I think what we could do is certainly run the model to see what the effect would be either way. The reason we all felt, at least on the Board of Commissioners, felt that the 3-year rolling average was good is because it smooths out any major deviations. And the compromise on the mils per kilowatt hours was really kind of in between what the CAB recommended and what the Board of Commissioners were leaning towards. So we tried to kind of get in between. And I think there may be some, given what we've just heard from Chuck, in terms of mitigation of the impact for this particular year, that we may be able to take care of that, as you suggest, Bob, with some kind of modification of it. It's just hard to predict what it's going to be moving forward, As we've seen over the last couple of years, we've dropped by 0.5%, 1%, another percent, and we've got a fixed cost environment that we have to support, obviously. So this wouldn't even take effect until July of 2021. So there's a fair amount.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
So I guess I would just suggest, I don't think this motion language is actually on the agenda, correct?
Right. Yeah, it's not. It's not. Mr. Chair, let me say that, I've spent kind of the last 2.5 weeks playing around with payroll protection plan loans, so I haven't seen any information on any of this. I'd like to see the numbers. I'm uncomfortable with even seconding this or voting on this at this time. Well, I actually see what the effect is.
Thank you, Phil. I appreciate that. I mean, the second was just basically recognize that it was there. Then there's discussion, and then, of course, a vote doesn't necessarily need to be taken if people don't agree with it. I believe it has been drawn up as and everybody will be able to view it as what this means from a financial perspective. And what we'll do before the next meeting is make sure that that's circulated so that everybody has a view of that. And at least from what I've seen of it, it seems to be an excellent compromise in terms of what we're trying to do. We have to.
I agree, John, that the three-year rolling average is better than pegging it to any particular year. I think that's something we all said. I think that was the last meeting or the one before. Given that we just heard Chuck say kilowatt-hour sales might be down 8%, I do think it's prudent to put this motion on maybe for the next meeting, and then have the language be there and have the analysis done.
Sure.
Of what the numbers would look like, factoring in or out, as Bob said. What are we doing about this very once in a century kind of sales?
Yeah, like as the terminology, as you know, is it's called a black swan, right? So I absolutely agree with that. That we should take a look at it before and after, and I
don't think the intention in any of these formulae was to do something that would cause an immediate sharp drop. So that's all. I think we're all kind of saying the same thing.
Right.
Yeah, I think.
Let me say one thing first before I recognize everybody else. We've been working on this for a long, long time, and we have to get to the point of where we develop an acceptable formula.
Yep.
And if there's some untoward event, both up or down, that's massive, obviously we come in and we readjust it. But it's not set in concrete, as we all know. But we have to get off the ball here and just move forward. That's really all we're trying to do.
Yeah.
So who would like to speak? Go ahead.
John, let me go first. Let me go first. As a senior member,
yes. I'm sorry, Phil. I couldn't see your hand up. Go right ahead. Okay.
So, I think, and we support the concept. I'd like to see the numbers. We used to have a term a long time ago, it was called a blinking green light. And where we actually instructed the department to go forward and kind of pursue the idea, come back to us with more information. In the blinking green light, you can turn to red at any time. So that's kind of a term we used back in the old days when I first got on the board. So I'm in favor of giving the department a blinking green light, getting the numbers, and seeing what actually the impact of this is at this point. So that's my thoughts.
Excellent. I agree with that. Any other comments, Vivek?
Yeah, thanks, John. It's something that we had mentioned at the CAB meeting also, that I think the amount of money that comes to the town of Reading includes the above the line and below the line. I think the discussion that was had here was primarily for below the line.
That's correct.
I think for the above the line, it's useful to look at the capital projects. And I think because of the storm, there's going to be some changes in how the capital is also going to be allocated. So I think to get a holistic view of what the town would get, because at the end of the day, the town is going to look at the total number. So I think it would be good to look at the total number so that they have a better sense of that.
I think is there any reason not to include that, Colleen?
No, I just wanted to make a comment that because there was such a lack of maintenance here for so long, that a lot of our maintenance projects are actually in capital, because because they weren't being done cyclically as maintenance. Regular projects are done on an annual basis, so they were combined into capital projects for transformer replacement, service replacements, and things like that, because they were at the end of their useful life, so they're imminent to failure. So all of those are still capital projects. Yeah, it's 2% of the net plant divided by load, but just please keep in mind that the amount of infrastructure that we're replacing is a very short range, like less than 10 years to rebuild the entire system, and then you'll be back to a normal, regular increase. So you're not going to see increases to the overall plant like you are building a new substation and replacing everything. It will, you know, flatten itself out. So it's, I guess what I'm saying is the above the line is pretty abnormal for what would be considered to be a normal amount of infrastructure at a normal municipal light plant.
Yeah, no, so my only point was that for the next 4 or 5 years, I know there's a fair amount of capital spend and the net plant is going to go up. And it's just good to have that visibility. I think it's good from the town's perspective to have visibility on what the total number is going to be. So at the end of the day, are you
asking me to put the way it was originally, like side by side? Is that what you're asking?
No, I don't think so.
We used to have the numbers done so that you could see below the line, above the line, and then a total. Is that what you're asking?
Colleen, what I'm suggesting is that I think the town would like to know what's the final number that the town is can plan for in the future. So whichever way you can convey that information, I think you can say.
Vivek, if I could interrupt, thank you. The town has been asking us for this for about 2 to 3 years now, because they want stability moving forward. And what we're trying to explain to the town is, when a black swan comes by, all bets are off. So we do our best to try to put a formula in place. And I think the formula, by the way, from the formula we were just talking about, the town's going to be very pleased with anyway, because it's a really good compromise. And I think that, one, they'll be pleased with it, but we can't spend the bulk of our meetings into the next year talking about what the formula should be. We've wrestled with this thing so much. So let's go around, I agree with you, one more time. We'll look at the capital in terms of how much is allocated, et cetera. But it's going to be done in a context of a very difficult year and trying to predict. You know, if I had a crystal ball, if we all had the crystal ball predicting what was going to happen, you know, we wouldn't be at this meeting, right? We'd be on some yacht down in the Caribbean right now, perhaps, you know, without having that stock market drop out from underneath us. So I'm just saying that we've done how many different variations on a theme of what this was, quite a few to this point. And what I'd like to do by our next meeting is have this circulated, have everyone raise whatever questions they would like, and then let's come to closure on it so we can move forward.
Okay.
So John, yeah.
John, if I may?
I'm sorry, I'm not asking for any new stuff to be done. All I'm saying is whatever information already, because in the past I have seen both the above and the top line reported. So it's not the first time.
I will do that.
It's been reported in the past. All I'm saying is just show that.
Colleen has pledged to do that.
Yes, Wendy and I will put it back in the original format, but people call and they're like, I can't see it on the computer, I can't print it out. So everyone's going to get a poster board with all of the things on it, and you can add it up and we'll send it out, okay? Because
the last one was an eye chart if you went onto our website.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. I will put the totals back in, Vivek. I understand what you're saying, but please, if you can't see it on the computer, you're going to have to just enlarge it, because I can't get everything on one sheet, okay? But I hear what you're saying, and I will take care of it. Right, Wendy?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, sorry, Vanessa.
If I may, the simplest thing to do might be to put Dave's motion, on the agenda for the next meeting, so that there's a motion language and then accompanying tables in the board book that says what that motion would produce, with both the below the line, which is what it calculates, and the above the line, so that there's one thing out there, because I agree with you, John, we're very close, we've worked on this a long time, it's time to move on, but there's one thing to look at, and then if there needs to be a tweak made, we can do it at the next.
Very good. I agree.
Okay, so the 3-year average, that's the only option with the totals above the line. And we're going to do some analysis and send out another option looking at the COVID section of reduced kilowatt hour sales. Are we all in agreement?
And 3.875 mils, which is halfway in between both.
We will take care of it.
Yeah, because none of those tables that are circulating now, they all reflect assumptions of, sales are flat, sales are up 2%, sales are down 1%. But we just heard Chuck say sales this year could be down, 8%. So.
Yes, that's correct. But then.
So then just have those be.
What we're doing, Dave, is, I don't want to belabor, but what we're doing is we're going to mitigate that with all of our other funds, right? To make it whole basically through the year. And then
I'm just saying those tables are no longer, they're not going to happen. We already know they're not going to happen. That's all.
Okay. Very good. Okay.
John, hi, John, if I may.
Yes, Vanessa, please.
Thank you so much. So first, I'd like to thank the commissioners for collaborating with the town on this. I know it's been a long journey, but I and the board appreciate you working with us on this. So in order to continue that collaboration that we've had, that the commissioners have had with the board, I wanted to ask perhaps the select board as a whole. I won't speak for all of my colleagues, but I know I'd appreciate a bit of time to review the new proposal. It has been tweaked slightly from what had been some of the options that had been discussed previously. This obviously has significant implications for the town budget. I know, we've talked a lot about what the impacts are for RMLD, but as we talk about what's happening now more broadly and the revenue impacts that are happening to the town, it would be helpful if the board has the time to adequately review whatever this new proposal is. Perhaps we can discuss it a little bit further. I agree, we don't want to continue to kick this can down the road. It would be nice to wrap it up, but having the board involved, I think, contributes to that spirit of the commissioners and the board members working together. So is there a timeline for when we might anticipate having that so that the board has that time?
I think the calculations that we've been talking about for the 3.875 and 3-year moving average, rolling average, that's pretty much done.
It was put up on the website on March 19th.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, Tracy has the 3.875 that Wendy just sent her. If you want to put it up, it doesn't have COVID impact, but if you want to show that.
Right, and we can send this out to everyone. We can put it on the website so you have time to kind of take a look at it and to try and understand what the COVID-19 impact is going to be on it. Okay, so here we go. So this would go into motion July 1st, 2021.
This 3.7, Wendy, is this 3.875?
Yes, if you look down the mils per kilowatt hour.
Right. Okay.
It's 3.875. So you can see what the impact is in terms of the below the line payment. Under a 3-year average with, let's see, this one is
the title's wrong.
Yeah, the title's wrong. Go down to the next one. Okay, right here. If sales remain flat, so it goes from today's of 2.48 million up to 5409 million.
That's based on flat sales.
That was based on. That's what it says is based on flat sales.
Yeah.
And then if it go down to the next one, which is.
So John, I've reviewed these. I know that the board. Now the board chair, Mark Doxer, had proposed some alternatives to these, some of them that included a base minimum and a max to help create sort of guardrails, if you will, around payments to protect both the town and RMLD for fluctuations in kilowatt hour sales.
Yeah,
so has the the commissioners reviewed those proposals?
We have reviewed those proposals, and we felt that they were not appropriate for what we were trying to do.
Yeah, and more than that, to add to that, John, that we had this 2 months ago, and the CAB reviewed it, and the CAB didn't. The CAB voiced that having a revenue-based factor was not appropriate. So we did have that process.
Correct. Well, I mean, Mark did a tremendous amount of work on that. We appreciate that.
Yeah, no, he did. And I talked a lot with Mark about it, and you know, we did have those conversations. We did closely review what Mark produced and gave us in January. So now it's April. So we did go through all that 2 months ago. So I think for my part, we're so close here. I just think we need to see Dave's motion language, what the tables would be, how COVID factors in, and I think it's gonna still be kind of in these ballparks. And it's worth noting that the payments that RMLD gives to Reading is by far the highest in the state of Massachusetts.
Right, and you know, the town is not in good shape. I mean, from a cash flow perspective, the town has double what the finance committee thinks is a conservative amount. So it's not.
So, John, I appreciate that, but you know, sticking strictly to you know, there's much larger considerations that both RMLD and the town of Reading have as far as reserves. And I think it is safe to say that we are very fortunate that both RMLD and the town have budgeted very conservatively, and that we're fortunate to have those reserves, especially at a time like this. So, you know, I think the staff on both sides deserve a lot of credit for that work that they do that have gotten us here. I think as far as the most recent proposal goes, that the commissioners intend on voting on at the next meeting, if the select board can review that before it goes to vote, I think that would be appreciated.
When is your next meeting?
We're meeting weekly. So it's...
Okay. So you'll have the information to be able to take a look at it. And
so we'll meet tomorrow, and then we'll meet either next Tuesday or Wednesday.
Okay.
So can I add, so this is actually new, Vanessa. You haven't seen this. This is 3.875. The sentence above it where it says 4% is wrong, so we'll change that. But I will just redo this one. These numbers are correct for 3.875 and 3-year averaging, because that hadn't been suggested before. But I'll have Wendy add on the total with the above the line payment and any adjustment that we think would be necessary for COVID or for impact to capital to the above the line payment on there.
So for the sake of the board's understanding, can we keep the above the line and below the line separate? Because the equation, as we're talking about revisiting, affects only one and not the other. So taking the payment in whole is not entirely accurate from the way the town does it.
Vanessa, we're talking about keeping it. What you're seeing on this chart is the below the line payment. I mean, that's the bulk of the payment. I mean, that's the
yes,
large
absolutely, absolutely. What I would ask is if the above the line could be kept separate from that.
Well, it is separate.
It's always separate. Yes.
Yeah.
No,
this is just showing
we used to have a box that was this box and then another box connected to it, so you could actually see both boxes. And then Wendy had a total across, but they were two separate boxes. One was above the line, one was below the line. So based on Vivek's request, I think if that would be helpful, I'll put it back like that. So it looked just like this with a box next to it with a total, but they won't be integrated.
Yes, I think that's a great idea, Colleen, because I think the select board looks at this, they need to see, okay, the formula only affects the below the line, but there's also this other piece, and it also changes, and we'll be going up with our capital investments.
Correct.
That's what Vivek was saying, right?
Yeah, exactly. So,
okay, good. I think we've wrestled this one enough.
Yep.
Can we move on?
Yep.
Let's see.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Chuck, did you cover the home information sessions and the new rebate programs?
I did not, but I'm glad to very quickly. We got through 2 of the 4 home information sessions. We usually schedule 1 in each town annually. before COVID shut down our social interactions. And we are looking at creating a webinar, either with a voiceover or that we could present in a Zoom meeting format to allow people to interface with the information that we would normally present. We'd post it on the webpage or run one webinar that on 2 separate nights that all 4 towns could be invited to. We're still finalizing that, but we're looking for ways sort of around the social isolation issues that we have right now. With respect to new programs, just wanted to call your attention to the fact, and these are posted on the website, that we have a heat pump program. We have 2 rebates under that program so far. Dave Talbot is probably aware of this already, but the solar program through DOER has been extended to the end of the year.
Oh, great.
And we are launching a yard products program where we're going to put rebates on electrically operated lawnmowers, weed whackers, chainsaws, blowers, and tractors. So we're doing that. As part of launching the heat pump program, we got some feedback from the CAC here in Reading, and we added a program to do panel changeouts, either upgrades if those are necessary, or we've included the new smart panel in the rebate incentive. So we've just got some additional activity that we wanted to bring to everybody's attention.
May I ask a question, Mr. Chair?
No. Oh, I'm sorry. That's up to the chair.
Oh, yes, please.
So Chuck, we're on track. There's still like $200,000 worth of, or more, $400,000 worth of this special solar rebate that's available through the end of this year. Is it something like that?
It's a little bit less than 200,000 at this point.
Is that combined, or is that the RMLD half of the DOE?
Well, I'm talking about the RMLD half.
So then when you put them together, there's 400 grand still available for people in the RMLD service area, and that includes municipalities to use for solar projects. And it's a very I can tell you from personal experience, it's a very generous rebate. So and Chuck, is it fair to say that we're nowhere near on track to have that money spent based on the permitting you're seeing or the applications you're seeing?
At the rate that we've been going, I would not expect that we would spend that through the year.
Okay, so we have 2 select board members on this call. It's worth noting there's this money sitting there that could be used for solar projects in Reading or in the other towns, and it's sitting there ready to be used. It's $1.20 a watt. And so I can tell you, I'm doing it on my house. It's going to give me like 1/3 of the cost. And then when you factor in the federal tax credit, it's another 1/3. I mean, it's ridiculously good. And the town could be taking advantage of it, as could anybody else out there. And it's sad that, yeah, we're all in tough times right now, but this thing is sitting there to be used. And I just would hope that everybody does something to get the word out so that it does get used. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
And can I ask a question? Chuck, did you talk about the virtual audits, home audits?
You did.
I had mentioned them in the COVID assessment, but what we're doing is going through a comprehensive assessment for alternatives to deliver the efficiency programs in the current and anticipated going forward social isolation environment that we're working in. So we're looking at virtual audits. We are looking at solar in addition to the incentives that are offered through DOER for behind the meter solar. I would remind all 4 communities that we're looking at solar program to put it out on existing public and large commercial facilities on a subscription basis, similar to the Solar Choice 1 and Solar Choice 2 programs. So we're trying to be as active as we can and see what we can do to keep things going.
Great. Thank you, Chuck. Could we move into the engineering and operations report, Hamid?
You're on mute.
Yeah, I think you might be on mute, Hamid.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I guess I gave the report. That was the report on COVID-19.
Oh, okay. You did.
Yes,
That was
sorry.
okay. Sorry.
That's all right.
So I think we're moving into the procurement requests requiring board approval.
Yep. You ready for the motion, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
All right. Move to recommend the general manager through the materials manager purchase for, parents for the number, Toyota Hybrid Highlander SUVs with trade-in from MHQ Inc. for HARR, H-A-R-R, Toyota for $151,997 and one Ford F-150 eco-friendly pickup truck with trade-in from Marcotte Ford Sales Inc. for $32,536.50 pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30B, statewide contract VEH 98. The total of all four vehicles is $184,533.50.
Hamid?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
You get a second? You get a second on
I'm
that?
sorry. Let's get a second, please.
This is not a bid. This is just yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Oh, wait.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Now we can. Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, the internet probably. Yeah, this is not a bid. This is basically, we got codes from the state master vehicle list. It's a state contract. So we sent the bid to, not the bid, the request for code to many dealers, and only 4 responded. So as a result, we had a specific specification too. Like for the SUVs, we needed the cubic feet space anywhere between 66 to 87 cubic feet. And the ones that they're currently in the market on the PHEV and BEV, they are basically very small. They're not big enough for the engineers so they can put their tools and everything that they need into the truck. So
you dropped out.
The total, let me go over the budget for you. For 2020, we put in for $75,000, and in 2019, we budgeted $50,000 for a pickup. So the total is going to bring it to $125,000. But the price of these 5 vehicles total together is $184,533.50, which means we're going over by $59,533.50.
Can I add in that?
And the vehicles, they were carefully selected. Yes,
Jim.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yes.
So I think one of the parts that we're missing is, so we have a 30-point electric vehicle program, pretty comprehensive, and one of the parts of the program is the fleet transition, for us to come out with a fleet transition to electric, and to take that fleet transition and then to be able to offer it to town transitions and our customers. And we've spent a significant amount of time. We sent out requests for information to all of the electric vehicles, plug-in hybrid, and no one responded with the capacity that we needed for storage. The only one that came back as an SUV was a Mitsubishi out in Wilmington, but the majority of the storage compartment is the physical battery. And as Hamid said, we needed about 60 cubic feet. The reason why we're going over is because we didn't replace the vehicles last year and part of the year before because we were waiting for the electric technology to come in. And now we're to the point where we have a number of vehicles where we just can't physically get the inspection stickers anymore because they're rusted out in the bottom. So we've had a number of NEPA conversations with the other general managers, and we're just to the point where we have to replace the vehicles. We even looked at leasing. Now, the only way that leasing for a short period of time proved to be cost beneficial is if we did the entire fleet, which we didn't want to do. So I just wanted to add to what Hamid was saying that we really did a lot of homework on this because it was we even had XL in Boston, which is the only company that will come in and do a transition to an existing F-150, and they charge $25,000 to put a battery the size of it's almost 1/3 of the bed of a pickup truck is the battery, and it's $25,000 that you add on to a new F-150 truck. It's called XL in Boston. You can look it up. We even had them come in. So I just wanted to add that to you so that you would understand how much work we've done and how excited we are for a transition for electrification, but the technology is just not there.
Not there, right. So just to add more to that, for the SUV types, there are no BEVs or PHEVs, SUV type vehicles for sale at the present time. The PHEVs that are expected to arrive sometime in summer of 2020. However, even when they come in, they're not going to be all-wheel drive as we required. And so HEVs are currently available for sale on the SUV class. And as far as the pickup trucks, currently they don't have any BEV or PHEVs or HEV pickup trucks for sale, and they're expected to arrive sometimes in 2021 on the BEV and HEV class or model. So like what Colleen said, we've been going on, it's been a research project for us for past 6 to 7 months. And we are right now, we desperately need the vehicles, the SUVs for engineers and one pickup truck because most of the vehicles are disabled and we desperately need those.
Is there any other discussion? If not, I believe, does this have to be a roll call vote?
Yes, yes.
John Stempeck, aye.
Hennessy, aye.
Talbot, aye.
Mr. Pacino, aye.
Let it be noted there was 5-0 in favor.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, I think
for all the work you put into that too, Hamid, Colleen.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate we couldn't go electric on it. It's really a shame. But
it's a wicked bummer. It's really, we really thought that it was going to be happening, and then we had the program all set up of what we were going to offer to the towns for transition fleet and customers, but maybe we can try again next year.
Okay. Thank you. I think we're into just the general discussion to our next board meeting, Thursday, May 21st.
Yep.
Is that reasonable
that's fine with me.
Everyone?
Fine with me.
Okay.
Just one update, Mr. Chairman, when you get a minute.
Yes,
ready?
please. Go right ahead, Phil.
I have emailed to me this afternoon are all the warrant to be signed virtually or electronically here. So I guess I am the first one to have this done. So I got 6 emails with the copies of the warrant, and I also have an email that was sent to me probably about an hour and a half ago to get an electronic signature. So just to update you, the process has changed. So hopefully it all works right for me tonight. Before I go home.
Excellent. Welcome to the 21st century, right? That's wonderful.
Colleen's been promising this for a while, so she finally got it done.
Yeah, that was my goal. No more chiseling on a rock. It just took me a little bit. You'd be surprised what people get done when things get tough. Everybody works together. It's awesome.
The follow-up board meeting is scheduled for June 18th. That's getting a little bit further out. So perhaps we just note that in our next our next meeting to make sure that people can make that or need to change it. For the CAB meeting, May, Mr. Talbot?
Yep.
Excellent. In June is Mr. Coulter. Excellent. Thank you. I think we're finished. I have any other comments? Yes, please, Bob. Yeah.
Yeah. One question. I know Colleen had provided some information about customers asking for rebates. I might have missed it in the beginning, so I apologize. But the example was the Burbank Arena, where they were going to be doing, potentially a morgue for the town, and they had to stay in operation, and they were looking to well, Colleen was pointing to us to see if we would have the authority to lower their rates. I don't know if there was a discussion regarding that.
Not specifically on that topic. There wasn't.
You want me to?
Yes, Colleen, would you?
Yeah, so I notified the commissioners that was a request, but that's why I said with the rate doctrine, we're not allowed to give discounts or waivers, but we can work with them on payment plans. But I provided all of the electrical consumption to the fire chief as requested, and we were more than willing to work with them on that. I mean, we couldn't just waive anything because we're not for profit and it's customer money. So unfortunately, all we can do is really work with payment plans. But I never heard back from them that they wanted the equipment not disassembled. My understanding is it takes 5 days to reassemble it and get the ice back up if that unfortunately was the case. But I think Chuck maybe next month can provide an update with people who are requesting payment plans, like what the numbers are. But so far it's been it's just been regular. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chuck, right? We haven't had any major changes yet for payment plans.
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah. I guess that situation was a little different because they were saying the town was mandating that they stayed open. They would have shut down, so their bill would have, obviously decreased. So I didn't know if there was any discussion relating to allowing them to shut down.
I provided all the information requested of me to the fire chief, but I didn't hear anything back.
Are they open for or available for any of the federal or state assistance programs? Do you know, Bob?
I don't, and that would be something I think they'll have to investigate to find out if they can. But I think when I was reading into it, is they were looking to the town was making them stay open, so they were looking for either a discounted rate or obviously some assistance from the town to stay in operation, where normally they would have been able to shut down, but because they're being mandated to stay open, it's a little different situation. So I don't know if the select board had any input on that.
Karen, do you know, or Vanessa, do you know if they've?
That's the first I've heard of that. I was taking notes. Do you have any idea why they would be needed to stay open?
There were going to be a temporary morgue.
Oh.
Yeah. It's.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't look like we need it, thank goodness. But that was one of the functions, or their function.
Well, so there are FEMA funds and things, and the town is tracking everything they've done and extra expenses they've spent related to this. Perhaps that's an item that could be included. So I did write that down, and I'll follow up.
What we have done is offered to track the energy usage at any facilities that have been co-opted for COVID-19 related activities. The ice arena obviously being one of them. So we are able, with our metering system, to track usage date to date and be able to the financial impact of them staying open in the case of the ice arena, or continuing operations or opening operations if it's a shelter, although there probably aren't a lot of community shelters in this instance that would be used because of the social isolation protocols. But yes, we are tracking any facilities that are that we're made aware of. The ice arena was one. The log cabin facility, John, that we used is another.
Yep.
And so we'll make that information available for support in FEMA reimbursement filings.
Are there any other questions or things that anyone would like to bring up? Otherwise, we'll take a vote to move into executive session.
Okay.
Could I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chair? Yeah, move that the board go into executive session to consider the purchase of real estate and to return to regular session for the sole purpose of adjournment.
Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Mr. Pacino, aye.
Aye.
Mr. Talbot, aye.
Coulter, aye.
All right. How are we going to work? I got to redial in again?
Yeah, we got a different link. Tracy sent us different phone number, different link.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. You should go see that. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. I'm going to end this and I'll open that.
Yep. And